Hi everyone. Are you excited for the money portion of the day? Because we all need to make money.
Yes.
So I've got a great group of panelists with some really a broad range of expertise, as I learned when we were chatting before our panel. One of them is my roommate, which is kind of great. So we did come here together. But she's going to be bringing a little bit of the retailer's perspective, as Cheryl's now at Walmart Labs. So let's just kind of kick things off with just kind of you guys introducing yourselves to the audience.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Berner. I'm the founder of a company called Easily Do, which makes sure you never miss anything by combing through all of the data that you have and pulling out what's important and bringing it to you either on your smartphone or on your wearable device.
Ded Anson, president and founder of Brick Simple. We're doing a lot of work with glass, including creating a battleship game for glass and also medical device integration.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Yo. I recently joined Walmart Labs from a startup, and now I'm in the personalization department in product management, working on very personalized products for the consumer.
So just easy breezy question to start things off. What wearables do you actually own?
Well, I own a watch, and I think that's it, a smartwatch.
It's the Galaxy
And
Gear?
it's the Galaxy Gear, which goes on sale in 3 or 4 days in the US. Get one if you have an Android phone. They're awesome.
I've been through a few pairs of Google Glass, like many explorers, also wearing a Pebble, and I'm a Kickstarter supporter of the Omate True Smart.
I'm obviously wearing a Google Glass with actually, you can see it, customized skin by a company called G-Pop. So you can buy these for like $15 and customize your glass. I also have a Pebble, and I was actually also a very early user. This like huge thing that you strap on here that measures the calories you burn every minute called BodyBug. They're produced by 24 Hour Fitness.
Great. So let's kind of just kick things off with talking about, if you've got a new wearable device, and maybe we'll use the idea of Google Glass because that's what we were talking about most, in our pre-session. What do we do first? Do we try to get consumers excited about it? Do we sell to consumers first, or do we target a vertical, healthcare or education being, two big examples that we've seen discussed?
I think Google Glass is it's an awesome device, and it has a lot more applicable features to segmented verticals like healthcare, which Det will talk about some. I think when you talk about wearables like watches, like I can actually check and see if I'm getting emergency emails here without whipping out my phone. I think that's going to be attractive to a lot of folks. So I think that has more of a consumer appeal. So I'd say there are things about glass that make it just amazing for healthcare, like filming operations or for field service teams and crew that are just incredible. And I think with the watch, the core value is just bringing stuff 5 seconds closer to the consumer.
Yeah, I think a big part of this is really how consumers have been oriented. I mean, there's really a world we have before the App Store and after the App Store. I mean, we look at the Microsoft Spot, the work that Fossil did. The smartwatch isn't necessarily something new, but I think if you look at the consumer market, they're better prepared. In the case of Glass, Google's done something pretty radical with its Explorer program to get it out there, to get 10,000 devices out there, to get feedback, but also kind of get the market to understand what the device is and what this could be and the impact for them. And wearing glass full time, you really kind of see that. And I think when you look at this convergence between how the consumers have been trained on App Store type purchases, how we have all this wonderful high-speed wireless networking, that's really creating this opportune time to introduce these new types of devices.
For me, as a consumer, I think the way glass or wearable tech changes, or functionally how it changes the way we do things is divided into 5 parts. So one is informational, how we receive information. 2 is personal well-being, how we track health and fitness, and how that changes our lifestyles. And then education, how do we learn, how do we keep track of performance over time and compare them, get coaching. And then fourthly, life logging, how does that change photo sharing, how does that change taking a video of this panel that I'm speaking at right now? How do you share that? And then lastly, communication. How do you change the way you used to pick up your phone and speak, and now with Glass you don't have to do that anymore. Personally, I think in using Glass in my experience, socially I haven't found as much use, but in terms of fitness and sports, I've been using it a lot to track my personal sort of progress in like rock climbing or squash and golfing even.
So if we take this consumer example, it's still very much a minority of people that are willing to wear a smartwatch or Google Glass. I haven't actually touched one myself, and I don't plan to anytime soon, even though I write about wearables. So how do we, what do you think we really need, or what needs to be updated, or what needs to be offered that it's going to push kind of wearables, Google Glass, and smartwatches into more of a mainstream audience?
I think Google Glass is basically GoPro on your face. That's the broadest consumer angle that I can think of for Google Glass, and I think that's super attractive. And GoPro is a multi-billion-dollar company, so it's not a small use case. And then there are the healthcare applications, which are not trivial. Fitbit's doing really well. I think the watch is different though. It's not GoPro on your wrist. It's really 150 times a day people pull out their phone to check something. That just cuts that down to like 25 times a day if you have a watch that's kind of giving you a view into what's coming in for notifications. And I think that means more eye contact with people when you're talking. It means feeling a little more comfortable socially. And I think the glass and watches are going to both play together because they will have different, I don't see them as completely overlapping or in many ways overlapping a lot.
I see glass as a really heavy, big lift. It's a big leap to ask consumers to volunteer themselves to be a cyborg, if you will, paranoia. I mean, you see that. I mean, that is a huge ask and demand. It's really, people are familiar with watches and phones. You're asking them to do something dramatically new, and it becomes part of their appearance and persona. And I think that's a tremendous barrier to consumers. I agree with Michael's point. The watch is a lower barrier. I mean, I don't think anyone in the room wears a traditional watch out of functionality. You have all these timekeeping devices. But it really comes down to the utility. Are you getting enough utility out of wearing glass? Are you getting enough utility out of that smartwatch? And those use cases aren't necessarily intuitive. It's okay, technology is interesting, we all have shiny objects, but the use cases that are valuable aren't necessarily intuitive. I mean, for me, the best use case of the smartwatch is while I'm sleeping. And I can't say that about much technology, but when I get a message that I'm not reaching for my phone off the nightstand, I'm not doing that I can quickly see that in the smartwatch. And that's something when people are talking about the excitement of smartwatches is not dealing with work email at 6 o'clock in the morning thanks to a time zone issue. Those types of things will come out through use, much like the Explorer programs revealing new types of use. I think as we see the smartwatches improve, we're going to get that level of utility, which may be appealing to consumers. But in the midst of this technology, we're talking consumers monetization, that we can't forget that there's value with some technology like glass right now to business. And you see that kind of strong interest where there's vertical interest in this versus a strict consumer.
In fact, I actually think that my smartwatch should be my Fitbit or my job went up, because I actually I had the first 2 versions of Fitbit, but I stopped using it. Instead, I downloaded an app called Moves, where it tracks my movement through my phone, because I carry my phone everywhere. Why do I need my phone and my Fitbit Flex with me? But now that the smartwatch provides an additional utility, it's really just a reader, and it's a companion to my smartphone, because I can read my messages and sort of cancel calls just with, kind of very subtly with a gesture. This should really merge with fitness tracking apps.
Interesting. And then, what about potential partners for wearables? And I could see, one of the things that I've written about a great deal is sort of how does the fashion industry play a role with sort of helping technology companies create devices that people actually want to wear that aren't, a cyborg. It's not a camera mounted to the side of your face, but it's something that you're proud to wear, and it's expression of who you are.
So I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, and I know you brought up this concern that these wearable techs, does it really appeal to women, right? And I'm a woman, but I wear them. Not so much glass everywhere, just for sports, but Pebble I wear it everywhere. And may look masculine, but then the reason why I love Pebble is because you can replace the strap, and I bought this leather strap that's sort of more trendy, and I downloaded a watch face that makes it look more elegant, and I can change it when I go out. And so I think it's up to people to come out with devices where you can actually adapt to social situations or more
customization.
Yeah.
And I think to Cheryl's point, when you have it in your pocket, it's not there, it's not visible, but being that it's part of your ensemble, if you will, that it's something that's exposed and people see it, the ability to style it, make it your own, that's an important part of the equation. And we as technologists and entrepreneurs involved in technology, that hasn't been really at our forefront. That's not what we've been thinking about. We haven't been thinking about what does this mean. I mean, you go look at Verizon's Droid branding and campaign, which I think pretty much ignores the existence of women. Part of that is that I think men and women both understand that if I put this on, is it going to be fashionable? Is this something that can adapt to my fashion? And I think there's opportunities. I was speaking in Philadelphia. We have opportunities in fashion where this can perhaps create new opportunities. And you brought up David Lee's G-Pop with the skins on the glass to heighten that.
An easy way to make money right there.
Right there. And that's a potential market that did not exist. When you look at watch faces and finding the watch faces that are tailored and fit your style, and there's ways to promote brands. We're all familiar with the Disney Mickey Mouse type watch, a classic design, that there'll be opportunities for those types of brands, much like in the way we have ringtones now. I think that's part of the equation of the wearables, is it's not just a matter of software. We love software. It doesn't require a lot of capital. We can code it in our basements, garages, whatnot. But the opportunity to go and extend this and extend it into new types of really effectively content and assets and pull some of these things which have traditionally been a physical item that you purchase, turning those fashion items into something that can be delivered digitally.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's something that isn't really done now. Yes, you can buy shoes on the line, but you can't necessarily download a new shoe and be right there ready to go.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed is that when it comes to wearables, it's the big players, it's companies like Samsung and Google and Apple that are sucking up all the kind of oxygen in the room. Apple, amazingly, just the bulk of articles written about Apple's entrance into wearables, and they haven't even announced the iWatch yet. So do you think that when it comes to monetizing wearables, this is really going to be won by the bigger players, or do you see startups really having the opportunity to innovate?
Well, I think these big companies, first of all, the incumbents that have the insider track would be the smartphone makers, right? Because they have the hardware and people are already using them. And so like companies like Apple, Google, Samsung, HTC will get into the game first, but they would be a platform, and then startups can come on and create apps. So you do need those big players to create that ecosystem. But apart from smartphone makers, the second tier would be the companies who have a lot of big data about consumers. So companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon even, and even Walmart, who has a lot of consumer data about what they're already buying, can have an opportunity in this space as well.
I think when you look at talking, especially on data, there is an advantage to the incumbents that have solved those big data issues, that have the ecosystem there. Because while wearable technology brings immediacy, if you don't have the content, that immediacy is useless. It's wasted. You have to have that content. You have to have that ecosystem to deliver the data and deliver the solutions. Otherwise, you've just made something useless closer to the user. You want to be able to have that kind of content that will drive the utilization.
I guess I disagree with my panelists. Big data has never made a great experience for a consumer. I think there are going to be a bunch of small companies that figure out what that great experience is, and then the big data will come for them. There are some companies with big data, that, like Facebook, that get both, and they are going to do a great job. But everything's open today. We go out and get all the important posts, sad news, happy news, broken niece's arm off of Facebook. There will be an app provider that figures out and probably dozens of them, what is it that we can do now that we're 5 seconds closer to the consumer and we know motion all the time and we can do all these different things. And then what's that one use case that lets millions of consumers want to use this thing?
Yeah. So here's actually where I get excited, right? So you're talking about big data and how information, is it useful or is it useless? How do you make that useful? So everyone knows a lot of information and has this knowledge about what's good or bad for us. For example, Big Mac. We all know Big Mac is bad for us. But at the point in time where you're in front of a McDonald's and you're hungry and you're really craving for this burger, you're going to just go and do it and eat it, right? And then you might regret later and be like, well, I just gained 5 pounds. But for the first time ever, talking about wearable tech, you have this device on your head. The feedback loop is faster, and there's less friction to sort of pull out your phone and figure out the nutritional value. As you're walking to the McDonald's, ideally, this would tell you how it correlates to your personal data and talking about quantified self and health and fitness, that if you were to eat this Big Mac at this time, 2 months ago when you ate a Big Mac, this affected your cholesterol level, and this affected your heart rate in this manner, and then you ended up gaining X amount of pounds. So to get that real-time information before you take that action will change people's behavior, and this is where I'm really excited about how this can change our future lifestyle.
That's fascinating. So you see a company like McDonald's actually being negatively affected by the wearables trend because people have got devices on their mounted to their faces saying, "Do not eat that."
Yeah, so that's how Fresh Choice makes money off of wearables. They build that app.
Yep.
But I think when you look at this,
Whole Foods is
Or
just
it could
going
be
to
a
kill
good
it.
example. Say you customize and tell your app that, hey, you're gluten-free, I know you are a vegetarian, you have certain dietary restriction, you walk into a store to shop for stuff, you put stuff in your cart, you scan it, and you can even do that with the barcode scanning already, and you can immediately detect what items you should not be buying.
I think and Robert brought it up this morning in his keynote, it is about the context. And I think if you look at what when Google Now launched, we all thought, we're very nerdy, thinking this is really not just about being on the phones. It's about being able to have that data to make, give the consumer choices to make those decisions, to know that your flight's running late or you need to get moving to the meeting. It's being able to assemble that and really building out the kind of infrastructure. And Apple's doing the same thing in terms of Siri and how they're approaching Siri and how they're approaching their hands-free solutions, that it's really about prepping there. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for small companies to make big waves in that as we build that out. But you see this shifting from being something where you have to constantly search and look up information, but you're getting much more contextual information.
Okay, so back to this monetizing, which is of course our theme. We've talked a little or touched on some of the verticals, and healthcare was our big one. So just to take that example, do you think that people that are building these apps, for wearable devices, and we've talked about the platform approach and so on. I mean, is it easy to just sell that technology to a hospital? Like, do you see there just being massive barriers to adoption? Can we talk about selling to the verticals in a real way?
I think part of the challenge that we have has been regulatory. Well, for one thing, when you look at our healthcare side, there's barriers. We've got our HIPAA concerns. What happens with glass when it has to take this information, go up to the cloud, suddenly everything goes sideways on HIPAA. We have FDA concerns. We have Sarbanes-Oxley concerns. It is the single most regulated space. And I think the challenge for startups in that space and monetization strategies is that you're dealing with something that has these massive regulatory barriers. One of the companies we work with at Adherent Health, they have a former FDA governor on their board just to help them navigate those issues. I think if you look at the recent FDA decision around apps related to healthcare,
the final guidance.
Yeah, and that guidance provides, it creates opportunities, then creates opportunities for lots of these applications. I mean, one of the clients that we're working with, Sorora, they've created a sensor array that can determine whether or not someone has a concussion. And the excitement of that from a battlefield, an athletic scenario, that you would be able to combine that technology with a wearable and actually make a determination, a caregiver, a physician, can make a determination whether or not the person had a concussion. That's huge. That type of monetization is more along the lines of a traditional medical device. And I think the challenge is when you look at a healthcare system, if they're going to equip their doctors, they're going to equip their nurses with glass, what's the ROI on this? We're trying to calculate ROI on something that's simply not done. And you also have to look at where can we impact quality of care, where can we deal with issues on the patient side like adherence and compliance. Those things are going to be challenging. I think there are some spaces where there's better opportunities to break through, but because there's so much interest in healthcare, and obviously personal health when we talk about Fitbit, et cetera, but also how medicine is practiced, there's a lot of opportunity to finally have this technology that maybe it's enough to push and get in there. And we talked earlier about this 70% of physicians having iPads, which is an insane product penetration. What do these devices mean to that same user community?
I think about it as there's functionality and in healthcare you can charge for functionality and many other areas. But are these devices more about functionality and being distributed to tens of thousands of people? I'm here because I'm super excited about these getting to 100 million people or 200 million people, and so it's not about necessarily the functionality for each vertical. It's about the distribution, and then when you have that kind of distribution, then for the consumer, what's the experience? You're starting to think about, okay, well, a consumer today is just overwhelmed with, we were talking before, so you can't walk past a mall without getting a notification on an alert or a deal. So you just ignore them, and you get all these other things coming into your phone. I think what this does is it just gives the developer another platform to get a little closer to the user, 5 seconds closer, because they don't have to pull the phone out. But it also lets the developers start to bring them in a much more funneled way, because you really have to think if you're developing for something like this or like Google. You really have to think like, do I want to send 10 notifications today? That's important because those notifications that you send are going to get noticed. And if your monetization model is off of distributing coupons, or your monetization model is off of selling gift cards, or your monetization model is off of collecting data from the user on different health data points, or other things, then you want that interaction, because that extra interaction is, for Facebook, that's money. For small startups, that's also money.
So I guess in terms of monetization at a broader level, an interesting model that I think could work is obviously these will be first worn by early adopters, sort of people who are probably more well-to-do. It's not for the mass market. So to capture those consumers, you probably have to think of a different model than when it's mass market, right? But I also think an interesting business model is the sort of ad-supported model. I know it's traditional, but for example, Kindle has done really well in that manner. So you have the ad-supported model that's $20 cheaper than the non-ad-supported model. And I think if companies can personalize and send very, very targeted and personalized ads to the consumer, that they wouldn't mind seeing that as you're walking through a mall, and sort of a very Minority Report type scenario where you're getting very targeted offers sent to you. I think consumers might not be upset about that, as long as I'm a guy. Don't send me Victoria's Secret discounts. Send me I don't know, what's your favorite?
I think you have this glorious opportunity that there's engagement to die for. People look at this all day long. That's the good news. The good news is it's right there. It's not 5 seconds away. It's immediate. It's engagement to die for. The bad news is it's the size of a postage stamp, basically. And that's what you have to balance out, that you have to have that content that's appropriate, that's a fit. I mean, we see pushback on Facebook's mobile advertising strategy and how they've dumped all this information in the timeline, is because the users have limited real estate and they're scrolling through all these various ads and promotions. That you have that engagement with the user, you need to make very valuable use of it, and that targeting is what's going to make that kind of engagement more valuable.
All right, one very short and sweet question from the audience. Anyone? Shoot.
We've been talking, what you guys have been talking about is monetization and location-based targeted advertising. That hasn't really kicked off, right? I had this mobile for the last 5 years, but how is it going to change for a wearable device?
So in that sense, I think your mobile phone is still something that has friction, as you have to pull out your app to see and check, and you have to unlock your screen. But if the device is on your head, the friction is reduced. I think the reason why Instagram took off with photos on Facebook sharing is because they reduced the feedback loop to posting the photo on your Facebook and getting a response. So in a similar fashion, if you have this thing on your head and it's always on, always present, as you get things that are coming to you, you can either choose to ignore or accept. It's not something that you have to pull out. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, these things don't add any more GPS information than, there's not even a GPS chip in these. So it's more about the display than the sensory aspect of these.
Yeah, the only exception, of course, is glass, because glass has the gyroscope and the compass that you're getting the kind of detail that you don't have access to. But I agree to your observation, is that we're not properly capitalizing on that GPS location-based anyway right now, and having more data points doesn't necessarily help us.
Great. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank
for
you.
wrapping up.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.